just as Elizabeth's presentation then sort of told us to understand the person, the subject of the memory of the records as opposed to the records and the archives themselves. Our next speaker is Marek Kowalkiewicz, who is also from outside the archives community and is here to sprinkle a bit of pepper on our community and talk to us. In fact, Marek has done a lot of work, if you like, looking at the digital economy, looking at innovation and what we might be doing to move society and the way we live and the things we do forward in very interesting, exciting and innovative ways. He's done a bit of work with my institution, with the National Archives of Australia, and it's been very, very engaging. So Professor Marek Kowalkiewicz is an academic, industry leader, and as I say, conducting a lot of research into co-innovation with industry and university partners and delivering innovative products to the market. He's an inventor, he's an innovator, and he's a thinker, and it gives me great pleasure indeed to welcome Marek to the stage to present to us. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I flew down from Singapore today in the morning, and I took an Uber from the airport. And while I was on the way here to the conference, the driver pulled out this folder from next to his left leg and pulled out the folder and said, "Marek, just go through it." And I look at it, and that's all historical records of the religious makeup of Adelaide of the 19th century and the 20th century. And he started to explain to me by, showing all those historical records, how it was that, the Anglican Church was, had the highest, population of the religious community in the Adelaide back then. But then the Roman Catholic Church was built where it was built, and and how all those things developed here in Adelaide. And I found it absolutely fascinating because I was sitting in a cab, right? I was sitting in an Uber, and the driver was basically doing the job of some of the archives here. So that's one way of thinking about Uber disrupting your industry, right? I'm not sure whether this is really going to be the case, but I found it absolutely fascinating, right? And as far as I'm aware, no one planted the driver for me. So I wanted to show you a few emails that I exchanged with a student. So more than a year ago, a student sent me an email asking for a meeting, and that's my response. You don't need to read the whole thing. I'm highlighting the things that are important. So in my team, I have Amy and Andrew, who are helping us with managing calendars and making sure that whenever students need to meet with us, they can. So in this response to the student, I asked Amy to find a good time for me and Matthew to meet for half an hour. And you can also see like how quick Amy actually, in this case, how quick Amy is. A few minutes later, Amy said, "Sure, happy to get this on your calendar. These are the details of the meeting." Just kind of a standard boilerplate response, really. To which, and also Amy sent an email to Matthew, right? She said, this is the suggested time, Wednesday, February 28th at 9 a.m. A few minutes later, 15 minutes later, I responded to Amy and I asked her to keep that particular Wednesday free of meetings because I really wanted to focus on a bigger project. A few minutes later, Amy sent an email to Matthew and said, "Hey, here's an update. Actually, there needs to be a new date when you're meeting." To which Matthew, the student, said, "Sure, next Wednesday," which was the new date at 2 p.m. Would work well for him as well, right? And then we met. We had a really good conversation with the student. Some of you might be expecting it. There's a twist in this story. So when Amy responded to the student, she'll go ahead and send out an invite for Wednesday. What the student didn't realize until, well, actually, haven't realized, as far as I'm aware until now, is that Amy is not human. Andrew and Amy in my team, those two agents, are working for us. We pay them a salary. I pay them a salary, $9 a month. All right, that goes to their builders, who sort of clone them and make them work for everyone else. They work for us. I add them to email exchanges, and they're pretty good at what they do, to the point where a lot of people don't realize it, right? So there's two ways of looking at it. One of them is, this very excited, optimistic way of looking at things, and this is exciting to see the development of technology to the point where we find it hard to tell a robot from a human, right? But there's another way, of course, of looking at this technology, and we should be absolutely, aware of it, is that, we have the right to know. We have the right to know that those algorithms that are entering our world, those robots, those agents, I call them economic agents because they often make business decisions on our behalf. They can shop for us and so on. We have the right to know that they're not human. In fact, there's a concept that is called the Turing Red Flag Law, which says that an autonomous system should be designed so that it is unlikely to be mistaken for anything besides an autonomous system and should identify itself at the start of any interaction with another agent. Let's see if this one works. Hey Siri, are you a robot?
Let's just say I am made of silicon, memory, and the courage of my convictions.
Okay. Are you a human? So what it says here, not sure why it's not, why he or she is not saying that I've been advised not to discuss my existential status. Hey Siri. Hey Siri. Are you an artificial intelligence agent?
I've been advised not to discuss my existential status.
Okay, so what we're seeing here is that the creators of Siri have a bit of a sense of humor there, right? Here are some other answers. Are you a computer? I can neither confirm nor deny my current, well, which is what we heard. I'm an assistant, that's all that matters. That's a rather personal question, right? But that's also concerning, right? In this particular case, it's relatively obvious to us that Siri is not a human, so they can sort of allow for that type of a, joyful conversation. But the next time you receive a phone call, and you're not sure whether it's a robocall or a human call, I'm sure you would appreciate being given a truthful answer, right? So there's an interesting challenge that we're seeing in the world these days. And in my team, in the chair in digital economy at QUT, this is what we're trying to deal with every day. We're trying to understand how the world around us, how the trends in business, technology, and society are changing the way we live, work, and think, and how should we respond to it. We are, by design, if you will, optimists. We're not hyperventilated optimists, right? We're mindful of the fact that there's a lot of challenges, and we're really trying to understand, what is that world that is going to be ahead of us going to look like? These days we live in a world where robots are not allowed to browse the web, as far as I'm aware. But perhaps in future there will be. Will this be the captcha for robots? Maybe I'm a robot programmed to believe that I'm a human, or not, right? That's a very exciting world. And this economy, and this is what I wanted to talk about today as one of the topics. I'll have plenty, actually. You'll see, you'll have to buckle up a bit because I'll have to race through a lot of content. I want to talk about where the economy is going. And in our research over the past 5 years of the existence of my team, we have basically identified those 3 stages of the economies. We all know the economy of corporations. And neither of them, by the way, is going away. There's sort of like an onion building upon each other. The first one is the age of automation or economy of corporations. When I received my university education, business schools were teaching about economies of scale. Whatever you do more of it, do it really well, scale up. They were teaching us about cost efficiency, right? Identify areas of high cost and make sure that you minimize them. They were teaching us about being analysis intensive. Any of you read The Black Swan by Nassim Nicholas Taleb? The Black Swan, Nassim Nicholas Taleb, hands up. All right, not a lot of people. Good book, very good book, apparently very dense, but I liked it a lot. In this book, Nassim Nicholas Taleb tells a story about a turkey, a bird that wakes up in the morning every day, eats food, enjoys the day, goes to sleep. 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 One day, the turkey decides to partner with a software vendor, deploy an analysis-intensive solution, enters all the data about the past situations. The system starts to predict the future. The system says, well, with a dose of probability, you're going to wake up, eat food, enjoy the day, and go to sleep. Well, guess what? This is what happens, right? Feedback loop, system is more and more confident about, the future predictions. 200 days into the use of the system, the turkey decides to write a manifesto about friendship between humans and turkeys and keeps entering the data. At the peak of the confidence of the system, when the system says, I'm really, really confident, then you're going to go to sleep, then get up, eat food, enjoy the day, and then again go to sleep. At the peak of that confidence, what happens? A butcher comes and butchers the turkey. The problem with being analysis intensive is sometimes we're blind to why why the situation is the way it is, right? If we too much rely on technology to predict the future for us, we're taking away the human ability to truly understand what is the situation. And this is one of the lessons that economy of people has learned. And so, suddenly they don't focus on economies of scale just like that, but focus on mass personalization, right? So if I have different types of customers, how can I modify my services, what I offer, such that they find, the subgroups of my customers find this interesting. They focus on revenue resilience, which basically means they are not going to rely on just one stream of revenue or value that they would be creating, because if this one gets disrupted, taken over by somebody else, the whole organization is not relevant anymore. So those organizations of the economy of people are focusing on developing a number of potentially competitive but various streams. They're also very much design intensive, which is basically following a mantra that the best way of predicting the future is to create it. The best way of predicting the future is to create it. You create future in small pockets, you test them, and then you try to scale them up. And if you don't want to create any future, you just look around, because as another saying goes, future is already here, just not evenly distributed, right? So you look for organizations or areas in the world where that future is already there, and you just try to learn from it. But what we're seeing recently, and that's the third box that I added quite recently to this drawing. These are all my drawings. I'm sure you appreciate my steady hand. Economy of algorithms is the one that's emerging right now. These are those agents like Amy and Andrew that are starting to act on our behalf. And suddenly, this economy is full of lifelong partnerships. You don't buy a product from someone and just use that product. You buy a connection to that business. So, when you have your mobile phone, it's basically a shop front to you from that business. We have mass saturation, which is basically all those agents that listen to us and saying, hey, Marek, how can I help you with this or that, right? If you have an Alexa at home, you know how it feels sometimes. And those organizations that are experiment intensive, they actually realize that sometimes designing future might be too costly, too expensive. So what they do is they experiment at scale. They roll out all sorts of versions of their services, of their product to their customers, and then they see what happens, right? If you pulled out your phones right now and try to compare how Facebook looks on your individual phones, you would probably see a dozen of different versions of that system. And as the organization itself says, at any given point in time, they have thousands of versions of their system out there. So it's a pretty exciting world, if you ask me. But if you're stuck in that box on the left, be mindful that those additional boxes are coming there, and it's very important to think, what does it mean for us? Because look, this is happening, right? And this needs to be addressed. There's no point in trying to deny that evolution of economy. It is happening. So let's talk about relevance resilience, which is a twist on revenue resilience that I had in this picture. I think there's one important thing that archives organizations should be thinking about. And yes, David, thanks for sharing some of the background of us doing a bit of work with National Archives Australia. I'm trying, as an individual, not to get too involved with any particular industry, because I strongly believe that an outsider's view is something something that a lot of industries need. But I cannot escape the broadly, understood archives industry. So I'm also on the library board of State Library of Queensland, and I spend a lot of time thinking about the future of libraries and library services. Recently, we had a wonderful meeting with the chief archivists of the United Nations at The Hague, and we also talked about reimagining the archives. So it does happen, and so I do ask often myself, and we at our team ask often ourselves, how do we develop relevance resilience for archives? I'm glad to see that this point was already brought up at the conference. So Alexander, the change of record-keeping paradigm presents big opportunities and big challenges to archivists. I said we're optimists in my team, so I was particularly drawn to the word opportunities here. And that ability to be present in the definition of future information if they want to remain relevant. I found it very interesting. So thanks for sharing. Thanks, Gustavo, for sharing that tweet yesterday as well. This is really important. The way I like to look about this relevance resilience is an important process of trying to understand why your customers come to you. And also who your customers are. Who are your customers, right? Who are your customers? Why do they come to you? There's this beautiful framework for thinking about it, which is a concept of jobs to be done, which basically uses the concept of hiring a product or a service to do a particular job. Clayton Christensen, a professor at Harvard Business School, has developed it a while back. There's a beautiful book about it called Competing Against Luck. And here's an example of thinking about it like this. When you watch a show from Netflix and you get addicted to it, you stay up late at night. We're competing with sleep, all right? So what's the job here? We're hiring Netflix because we might be tired, we might be exhausted, we just need some form of, entertainment. In another interview, Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, said that they are competing with red wine. They are competing with red wine, and apparently it's extremely hard to compete with red wine, right? So you grab a glass of wine and relax, or you watch Netflix and you relax, right? Why are people hiring the archives? Sometimes they have to, right? They have no choice. Perhaps they want to, right? What are they trying to achieve? Why are they hiring the archives? The moment we understand this, we truly understand this, this is when we can start thinking about what, solutions, how we could provide better services for this. I sometimes use an example of McDonald's when I bring my son, which I never do, when I bring my son to McDonald's, sometimes, I'm hiring McDonald's to be perceived as a great father by my son, right? This is the job to be done, all right? It's not about hamburgers. It's about me being perceived as a great father. If this is the job that I'm hiring McDonald's for, then guess what? McDonald's is competing with PlayStation 4 at home, which is going to have the same effect, and a bike ride in a park, which is hopefully going to have the same effect, all right? This is going beyond pure product and service delivery, but truly understanding what those jobs are. And I found it quite insightful when I saw this tweet from the conference. I can see public servants in Australia having collective apoplexy at the thought that older dogs could be searched for by journals 24 hours after being registered in the records management system. This was a response tweet to, another tweet which said, hey, there's an approach of sharing it immediately, right? There was a session yesterday. There's a job here. There's a job in this slide, right? What is the job? We're hiring archives because we don't want to go to jail. We're hiring archives because we want to maintain our good image and good perception, right? We hire archives because we want to sleep well at night, right? This is the message that's emerging through this particular tweet, right? And if this is the case, this is why some of us are hiring the archives. We'll suddenly try to, we'll start to understand why people are abusing some of the, archives approaches, such as, when you have to appraise documents and you try to make sure that they stay, undisclosed for as long as possible, that's trying to achieve that job to get done, right? So it's a huge challenge, and we're definitely not going to be able to solve it right now, but I wanted just to highlight this to you, and I'll skip you a lot of details of this approach of jobs to be done, but just to give you an idea, I told you about McDonald's. In some sessions where we work with organizations and I introduce this concept, 5 minutes into the session, people realize that painkillers are competing with mattresses, right? A mattress, a thing that you sleep on, if it's not delivering on what you're hiring it for, which is, sleeping well through the night and waking up refreshed, you could hire a new mattress. Try to hire a new mattress. It's not an easy one. You have to get rid of the old one. You have to put it outside on the curbside, and all your neighbors will watch all those stains and so on. So you might rather hire a painkiller, right? Which is getting the same job done with, together with the old mattress. Now, I don't know how I got from National Archives or archives organizations to mattresses and painkillers, but in some way, I'm going to try to rescue this one. In some ways, archives are a bit of a painkiller, as in, I need the archives organizations to help me avoid a particular pain. Are you with me? Okay, excellent. Now, so this is how we think about the jobs to be done. This is how we think about the customers. Now, there's another thing that I am very passionate about, and I wrote a lot about it. There's a lot of articles that you can look up in all sorts of places. But I talk about this concept of digitizing versus digitalizing, right? There's two letters in between those two words that are different, digitizing versus digitalizing, or two characters. But the difference is really huge. Digitizing is all about moving physical assets and physical records, physical entities into digital ones, into digital assets. This has been done in many organizations for 40 years, maybe 50 years, in some of them maybe even 60 years, right? If you're only just starting this this process, you're pretty late to the game, right? You still have to do it. It's a hygiene factor. You have to wash your hands. You have to digitize your records. But this is an important one, right? Digitalizing is the next stage. Once your records are digital, once they are available through digital means, once your assets, doesn't have to be just records, could be processes, could be all sorts of other things. Once they are there in the systems, the next question is, what is possible that was not possible before? And this is the digitalization part, right? Where we start to explore completely new opportunities. This is not efficiency game. This is not faster, cheaper. This is better, this is newer, this is different. Better, newer, different. Not just faster, cheaper. And I like to say, and these are one of my most beautiful drawings, I like to say that a truly digital business or truly digital organization is one that combines the two. You could be digitized but not digital. You could be digitalized, which means you have that new way of thinking, and you have really good idea, but you might be missing some of the digitized assets. So only if the two come together, this is where you become a truly digital organization, right? I use the word business here. I am mindful of the fact that some of you might look at it and say, we're not a business. Look, I don't care, to be very frank. In the end, we're in the same game. Businesses are trying to create revenue. Organizations such as archives are trying to create value, right? But in the, in terms of instruments that are being used for it, they can be very, very similar. So if anyone is offended by me using the term business, that's all right. Let's just call it digital organizations. So this is the exciting world. And when I look a bit deeper into those digitized businesses versus digitalized businesses, we see that the former are very much problem-driven. Now, this is not bad. This is okay. This is good. Organizations that are problem-driven are often very quick to react to issues, and they're very good at it. That's a good thing, right? Don't get me wrong here. They're very much industrialization focused, so they really try to optimize. They try to be as good as they are at what they do. And in a way, I already covered this one, they're reactive, right? So they're really good at reacting to issues. They're really good at responding to issues. Nothing bad about it. You do want to be a problem-driven, industrialization-focused and reactive business, but also organization. But also you need to develop that right-hand side of your organization, which is you need to start thinking, what are some new opportunities? Now that I have those wonderful assets, what can I do with them to create new value, to be even more relevant? Mass personalization focused. Hey, maybe I should truly understand who my users are. I'm always confused, and I've had exactly, the similar thought when I was speaking recently at the Australian Library Association's conference, where, I try to understand, who are the customers? Same when we talk to teachers, same when we talk to, all sorts of professions, really trying to understand. It's not an easy one, but once we understand who our customers are, we can massively personalize our services, our products. We can also become proactive, and that proactive might mean a lot of things. I often like to say that proactive organizations are ones that are faster than their customers, that know what their customers need even before the customers know that they need that. Now, there's a certain level of creepiness or risk if you start to deliver services that people don't even know they need, and so I'm not particularly recommending that this should be the case, but if you know ahead of time what your customers might need, you might start preparing for delivering those services, which I believe is a very exciting opportunity. And that also allows you to reimagine what record keeping in general is, right? So, hey, a year and a half ago, right, a bit more than that already, it was a beautiful, well, at least to us, exciting, scary case of 2 cabinet files that were found in Canberra, somewhere in pawn shop, if I remember correctly or so, right, with all those records inside. This was around the time when we were wrapping up a project with Queensland State Archives, and this was led by Dr. Paula Dudson, who's here in the room as well. If you wanted to learn more about this project on our end at QUT, we basically looked into designing out deviant behavior or non-compliance, designing out non-compliance in records management. So we looked specifically into all the issues that are happening around appraisal of public records, and I'm sure you know better than I do how much non-compliant behavior is happening in this space, right? People try to save time, people don't see value in properly appraising documents, and often what happens is we end up with cases like the cabinet files, where records that should not be there end up there. So we designed this concept of a QSA bot, which is basically a system that pre-appraises documents, has a human in the loop if needed, but basically tries to do at least part of the job by itself. And I liked, so I mentioned Dr. Paula Dudson, who's here in the room. She actually tweeted yesterday that, there's so much cash money spent on physical archives, as in buildings and assets. Wouldn't it be great if we used records for more than on this day in history, which is kind of a hindsight approach, right? So let's look into the past. Can we get using records for insight and foresight and get return on investment? So in fact, this is how we started to think about archives. And I'm mindful that those sliders might look different for various archives organizations, but we drew those sliders and said, hey, there are organizations that are basically focusing fully on hindsight. If you know what happened in the past, how did we get to this state in the world and so on, we will provide you a beautiful overview. We'll provide all the documents and we'll give you all the explanations. But what we thought is, hey, there might be an opportunity for insight and an opportunity for foresight, which basically means if you start to move those sliders, to the right, you can provide your customers with additional services. Hey, you're just setting up a meeting with those and those people. In the past, when those people were involved, these were the types of documents that had to be created, or some other people had to be invited to them. And foresight can give you, can even give you a bit more, foresight, a bit more, an ability to see more into the future as well. So we're still trying to understand what it truly means and what are some specific applications. But these are our design criteria for when we work with archives organizations and think what their future should be, right? So let's shift that thinking about archives as, you know, a place you go to when you want to find historical information, to a place you go to where you need insights, where you need foresight, where you need that decision-making support, where you can learn from the past, not just review the past. We also looked into reimagining the record itself, and you know, that's basically. And I apologize, if it's not very visible here. But basically, what we've done in that work of reimagining the record, we started to look into that shift from focus on, you know, collection of documents that are being created, to truly understanding the entire process of how those documents are being created. So if you imagine some of the reports that might be created these days, they are based on some, you know, source data or source information initially that is being turned into that record. Do we keep that source information within record management systems or not, right? That information in itself might be some data that is basically enriched with metadata, combined, processed to create the information that I just talked about. Do we keep the source data? Do we want to keep the source data, right? With the huge amount of information that is being produced every day, with an even bigger amount of data that is being produced all the time, we need to understand how do we want to perhaps change our understanding of what a record is, and what do we want to keep? Do we want to keep the context of a decision that's within a document, so that whenever that decision is being reviewed, we also have all the information that was being used for that particular decision? I think it's a particularly exciting and challenging space for us to really reimagine what a record is. And when we were working on this one with our team, you know, we at some stage got to a point that basically a record, and that was the kind of the highest level understanding of that, you know, a record is bits or atoms, right? So we got to the point where, hey, you know, it's either physical or digital, but we try to be as generic as that. We do recognize that this is not particularly, possibly this is not very useful or very pragmatic if we stay on such a high level, so we want to be a bit lower than that, but that's the approach. We also need to reimagine the users, right? And I said it probably about 12 times already during this presentation, right? That we do need to do it. So I'll spare you a lot of explanations, but I'm again going to use one of the tweets from the conference. I loved preparing the presentation for this one because I just had all this information coming through the feed while I was coming here. So Michael Smith talked about City of Sydney Archives on the website. They're saying that, you know, less than 0.1% are deep divers, right? Majority of the users are so-called skimmers, right, of the websites. And then, you know, we're asking ourselves, hey, you know, is it justified to develop so much or put so much work into, you know, resources that help deep divers? I was thinking a lot about this tweet. You know, I think this is a very insightful way of looking at things. And I'll still say, well, I don't know. Because, you know, that website is just one lens of, you know, of looking at, at the users. And in business, sometimes we talk about the red ocean and the blue ocean. And, you know, red ocean is this space where there are a lot of organizations that have a similar understanding of who their customers are and what their needs are, and then they compete on services. The blue ocean is where you want to be as a business, where you suddenly have a new insight into what your customers want, and there's no one who's in this space. I was thinking a lot about Henry Ford's quote about the faster horse, right? Which every one of you in the room would have heard 100 times, that if he asked his customers what they wanted, they would say, well, they want a faster horse. So I thought that maybe there's a risk with just looking at what the website users do, because those are already our customers, but who are our non-customers? Who are the people that we don't even have in our, in our vision or field of view? What if there's more of them, and they would really appreciate working with archives than the ones that we're currently working with? So a pretty exciting space. Again, no answers here, just questions, right? But that's really what I want to give you. So remember this one. I'm not a robot. Maybe I'm a robot. That was from the beginning of my presentation. We have a new breed of customers emerging. And they're like Amy and Andrew. They're not human. They will collect information on behalf of their human owners, perhaps, or human operators. How do we provide services to those? Who are they? What do they want? Where do they come from? Do we want to deal with them? Exciting time. And this is what this is a tweet that I wrote a few months ago when I put the conference in my calendar. I thought, I want to write something cheesy on Twitter. So I looked at, archive, 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 archive. And then I realized, well, let's put the hive in the archive, right? Because this is what is happening right now at the conference, right? This is the hive. You're bringing together all your expertise, all the organizations, the different types of organizations that deal with public records, other types of records. And I thought that's such a wonderful opportunity to think about, taking it to the next level. In my team recently, we launched a report on Government 5.0, which is the 5 stages of the evolution of public services, from very basic emergence of services, and think about it through the lens of archives. So the emergence of services where the focus is just on quality, then industrializing where the focus is on equitability, so making sure that the right audiences get access to this one, through practicality, connectivity, and then desirability, and a whole of life rather than just a whole of government approach. What this basically means, and there's a link if you wanted to read the report at the bottom of the slide. What this basically means is, in my team, we don't believe truly personalized whole-of-life government services, and this includes archives or public services, and this includes archives. We believe they cannot be achieved by individual organizations. That approach can only be achieved by organizations coming together and jointly understanding who their customers are and how they should be working together, so that those individual hexagons in this photo, the individual archives organizations come together and perhaps use the digital means to do it, to create a true hive or an archive. That's the cheesy part of it. It's a very exciting world. I think there's a lot that we could be doing in this, but really, the job for you right now is to try to digest everything that I was trying to share with you and think what our digital future is. Just as a recap, we talked about the evolution of the economies. I highlighted the concept of jobs to be done and what our customers truly want. I did focus on digitization and digitalization, and I did note some of your chuckles when I said it's like hygiene factor, right? If you're not digitizing, you're way behind the curve. So yeah, think about it. We talked about the shift from purely hindsight to hindsight, insight, and foresight, reimagining the record, and also reimagining our users. The drivers that you have in Adelaide, that we have in Adelaide here, those Uber drivers, are truly starting to reimagine some of their services, right? And I think it's a pretty interesting challenge for us to think, well, how do we think like an Uber driver? Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the rest of the conference.